So just to introduce myself, I'm Shelby King. I'm a marketing manager at Ezoic. And today I'm going to show you how to go through your contents data and kind of glean some insight on that and how you can use that information to kind of make some better decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen with you guys. Okay, so as you can see here, we're looking in big data analytics. Here I'm looking at the word count under page details on the content tab of big data analytics. So as you can see, if we scroll down a little bit for this website, we're looking at data from the past week. And as you can see, nearly 74% of all their page views go to articles that are about 1,000 to 2,500 words long. So that's a big chunk of their traffic. We can go ahead and pull this revenue column over. And so if you look at revenue, you can also see, yes, the majority of revenue is also coming from these articles with 1,000 to 2,500 words, so about 70% of the revenue, about 70% or 74% of the page views, so that all makes sense. But the interesting thing is that if we actually drag over our page RPM tab here, you can see that with the most popular, their 1,000 to 2,500 word count articles, they have a page RPM about $7.30. But if you look right here under the articles with 2,500 to 5,000 words have a $10 page RPM. So about a 30% increase there in page RPM between those two. So another thing to note is if you look at the articles with 5,000 words or more, they actually do have a higher page RPM, but it's not as high as the 2,500 to 5,000. So that's kind of important to note because if you were to write, 5,000 words, it's more time to write it or more effort, and you're not really getting that investment back on the time you took to write it, or maybe you hired someone to write it, compared to the 25,000 or 2,500 to 5,000 words. So that's an interesting thing to note. So, just going over that 2,500 words is about a 30% boost in page RPM. Another thing to note is that the pages or the articles with lower or under 1,000 words, here we see 750 to 1,000 is about half as much for the page RPM. When you get down to the 500 to 750 words, it's really small. So, for this publisher, their sweet spot, as you can see, is about 25 to 5,000 words. But if they're getting over 1,000 words, they're going to make twice as much for their page RPM. So that's kind of one thing to note. So do we have any questions there? I just want to make sure. So one of the cool things about big data analytics is that you can actually change this up here. So what you see with this visual. So there's a lot of different things that you can choose from. If we look at maybe average page engaged time here, you can see as the word count increases, the engaged time is also increasing, just about doubling every time it goes up. But you can kind of see here at about 25 and 5,000, 2,500 and 5,000 words, it kind of starts to level out a little bit. So that kind of tells us that for this website and these users, they have a kind of a limit to how much time they're going to be engaged with this website. So regardless of whether it's a 2,500 word article or a 5,000 word article, they're going to spend just about the same amount of engaged time on that. So that's kind of even more important for this publisher to kind of write in this sweet spot, because even though you can make a little bit more with the page RPM with 5,000 words, it's really not going to be engaging your users much more. A couple other cool things I want to point out is that you can compare date ranges in this. So I know a lot of publishers have been affected in one way or form with coronavirus. So you could maybe look at dates ranging from, you know, pre-coronavirus to post-coronavirus if you wanted, about the state range. If you wanted, you could just look at maybe the month of May in 2020 compared to the month of May in 2019. So you can really see year over year, what are the changes that have happened to my website. So that's an important thing to know. Another cool thing is that if you're one of those people who really likes to just dig into data by themselves and discover things by yourself, you can export all of this in an Excel sheet and you can mess around with it there if that's where you feel more comfortable. Another thing to note is that you can actually save these reports. You can set your special filters, or if you have reports that you reference frequently, you can save that report and it'll actually show up down here in your custom reports. So you can kind of make a little shortcut for yourself there. You can actually segment your users. So for example, there's a lot to choose from. A really popular one to look at is maybe desktop versus mobile traffic. It's a pretty common one. You can run that report. So here you can see that broken down. And if we take a look at these word counts, you can see here, oops, let me drag over this page RPM again, that the desktop traffic and the page RPM for desktop traffic for 2,500 to 5,000 words is really high. So that's kind of even more important for that publisher to create content in that sweet spot there. So another thing I wanted to show you is pages without revenue. I'm going to switch over to the screenshot here just because I wanted to censor some of it. This report does show page URLs and I wanted to keep that private for this publisher, of course. So this is a neat tab here. It's important to look at because you can see the pages that you aren't showing ads on, but maybe you could be. So of course, there are some instances where you wouldn't want to show ads. Maybe you have public comments on your website and maybe a visitor writes a comment with some profanity and you don't want ads showing up next to that, or maybe you have a piece of sponsored content and you have a special deal with the brand to only exclusively have that piece of sponsored content without any ads. That's a good example as well. But an important thing to note here is that if you see a mobile page that does not have any ads on it, but it might have ads for desktop, that's kind of signifies that you may not have your mobile ad placers turned on for that. So that's an important thing to look at. You would just have to go into the Chrome extension with the placeholders and turn those on for that page. So this one, this screenshot here is looking at the month of May, and this publisher, for instance, had about 20,000 page views that went unmonetized. So this is important because you want to identify whether you're kind of letting things slip through the cracks there. So any questions going on there? Okay, no questions. That's actually all that I wanted to show you in the dashboard. I did want to give you guys a chance to ask any questions that you might have. So now is a good time. I'll go ahead and put those in the Q&A. Okay, so how do I get to this report view? So this one is pages without revenue. This one I'm taking a screenshot of, but in Big Data Analytics, this is under the Content tab. So under Content, it's pages without revenue. So that's how you define this report. And then for this right here, we're looking at mobile and desktop traffic. So you would just create these segments here. So they're already built in, but if you don't see a segment that you want, you could always create your own custom segment. And there's a lot of different things that you can choose from, as you can see all these demographics, tech, content. There's a lot that you can kind of customize and dig into by yourself. Okay, so one question is big data a product that I have to pay for? No, big data comes with your standard Ezoic signup, so you should be able to access this in your dashboard. So I have a question here. I actually have Tyler Bishop here alongside me in this webinar, and I'm wondering maybe he can jump in and answer. We've got a question. Tyler, is there a way to track how much revenue is lost through ad blockers?
No, not currently. So it's a good question. There's definitely industries that are more affected than others. And if you look at some of the recent studies, pretty much the industry that seems to be affected the most is like the gaming industry, where you would expect maybe some of the audience specifically on desktop might perform more ad blocking mechanisms and things like that. But a good thing to keep in mind is that most ad blockers are banned now in common browsers like Chrome and different things like that. The most popular one has really been kind of neutered in a lot of ways. And then the mobile and tablet ad blocking cohorts are really, really small. So we've actually seen most of the material related to ad blocking go down, but we don't currently have a report inside of Big Data Analytics specific to ad blocking.
All right, Jake, I hope, excuse me, that answers your question. If there are any other questions, keep putting them through. Julia, I see your message. If you're getting a 404 error, I'm gonna have to look into that after the webinar, but I'll go ahead and ping you privately for that, unless Tyler wants to jump in.
You may just need to be logged in. If you're not logged in, you may not be able to access. So if you just log into your Ezoic account, and then up at the top, whenever you first log in, there'll be a bar of about 6 icons, and I think one of the ones over on the right-hand side, maybe second or third from the end, is analytics, and it should bring you in. So once you're in, that should work. Oh, perfect.
Okay, so we have a question. So what is revenue from mobile devices? So that is the revenue that you are making from visitors who are visiting your website on a mobile or cellular device. You can actually break that down if you wanted and look at people who are visiting from an iPhone, or get into specifics like that if you want. But yes, so that's what revenue from mobile devices. If there are no other questions, I'd just like to thank you guys all for joining us, and I hope this has been helpful for you.